Wales history of the Empire concludes tonight at 9. But now, to the court of Richard and Judy.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. Just before we go on, we've got some news coming in that the North Terminal at Gatwick Airport has been closed and all flights from there suspended and incoming flights are being diverted. There's no actual reason being given yet, but a man has been arrested at Gatwick in addition to the arrests of 2 men earlier at Heathrow. If we hear any more about it, we'll bring that to you. Also tonight, we take you into the parallel universe that's sucking in hundreds of thousands of people from around the world every day. It's a 3-dimensional country called Norris. It exists only in cyberspace. That's not it. That's a real meteorite, I think. But once you go into this virtual world, it's increasingly hard to leave it. Sinister or the shape of things to come?
I'm trying to show you the shape of things to come in the right order. A reward of £20,000 went on offer tonight to the person who can find this. We got it? Got it? It's that, the meteor that swept across the sky early yesterday morning. Why is it so important that it's found? We'll be finding out ourselves in just a few minutes.
Plus the profoundly moving film of the moment a black British woman first looked into the eyes of the African tribespeople from whom she's descended. One of her ancestors was sold into slavery hundreds of years ago. These are her blood relations, her long-lost family, and a new DNA test made that poignant moment possible. And more reasons to be cheerful tonight with our extremely successful guide on Thinking Yourself Happy.
I have to say, actually, on behalf of our technical team, that is the first time we've muddled up our pictures in our opening, what we call the menu, isn't it, in 18 months, to be fair to them.
Well, I wasn't being not fair to them.
They do a fine job.
Very fine job.
Just proves that it's live. Now then, actually, there's lots of evidence for that most nights. Now then, one of the most controversial films for years goes on release next week. It's already been condemned by the Pope and has shaken the Catholic Church in Ireland to the core. It's called The Magdalene Sisters, and it lifts the lid on what amounts to an organised regime of terror inflicted on helpless teenage girls across Ireland behind closed doors for decades. Thousands of girls were incarcerated indefinitely in institutions run by nuns with a penchant for mental cruelty and real physical sadism. And the reasons for locking these girls up, well, it could be as trivial as looking at a boy in a flirty way.
Breakfast is at 6. Prayer is at 6:30. Work begins at 7. Lunch is at...
Excuse me, sister. I think I should go. You see, my father was very upset.
Don't ever interrupt me, girl. Did no one ever tell you that it's bad manners to interrupt? Or were you too busy whoring it with the boys to listen? Is that what it was?
No, sister.
And are you simple-minded? Is that what it is? Are you simpleton? I decide when or if you're allowed to leave, and I think I can safely say it could be quite some time. What's your name?
Margaret, sister.
Margaret what?
Maguire.
Yours?
Rose Dunn.
We have a Rose. What's your middle name?
I don't have one, sister.
Well, perhaps not on your birth certificate, but I'm sure your parents will have thought of 1 or 2 names for you now. What's your confirmation name?
Patricia.
Then you may call yourself Patricia. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, sister.
Well, joining us now, the director of the film, Peter Mullen, and Mary Norris, who spent 2 years of her young life in what were known as the Magdalene Laundries, or the Magdalene Asylums. You've got an extraordinary story to tell, Mary, but we'll come to you in a second. I'd like to start with you, Peter. It's an extraordinary film, made more extraordinary by the fact that we know as we watch it that we are seeing an absolutely exact version of what really happened to these girls, these thousands of girls. And I have to tell you that not since the opening 25-30 minutes of Private Ryan has my head sort of gone back against the wall. I just was that pinned there with horror. But that's throughout most of the film. Why were so many Irish parents happy to send away their daughters, basically on pretext most of the time, into these hellholes, these psychological torment chambers?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that they were kind of happy to go along with it. I think they were caught up in that kind of dilemma where they genuinely believed that their love of their church should be greater than the love of their kids. And I think if the church came along and cast any kind of aspersions on them, saying, well, we suspect that they could even in the future become promiscuous.
Yeah.
That was reason enough to then follow the church's lead, in the sense that they would say, well, we'll look after them, we'll take them away, and thus there'll be no shame brought upon you or your family.
Because the girl on the left there that we saw and she was deliberately cast in the Bernadette with the pretty eyes and the pretty face, because she represents a real girl who it was just felt in her village she just looked a bit flirty.
Yeah.
She looked as if she might have come to bed eyes. So better send her away and lock her up.
Incredible. It was the most amazing thing about it, the most terrible thing about it for Mary and for thousands of women, was the fact that all you needed was a rumour. And if one, particularly from men, so if one man spoke to a priest, that I suspect, and oftentimes it was men whose advances had been thwarted, so it was it was a way of actually getting them back, was by saying, well, actually, the woman came on to me, Father, could you, and then it would reach the parents, and the parents would then speak with the priest, and the priest would then make sure the girls were actually taken away.
Mary, I know that when you saw the film, I believe that you wept at parts of it because it brought so much horror back to you. But in your own case, there was no suggestion that there was anything wrong with you. You were taken away from your mother originally and sent to school because they thought that your mother had taken up with a new boyfriend because your father had died. That was it, wasn't it?
That was it.
So they took you away from her just for that?
They said she was an unfit mother. This was the instigation of the local parish priest. And I would like to say something, that the majority of young girls in there were not put in by their own parents. They were put in by other institutions.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened to you, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you left the school at 18, and then
I left the school at 16.
16, sorry. Yeah, and then you had what did you do? You went to the cinema without permission.
Yes.
Something, and that they decided that made you put you in moral danger. Didn't they actually have you physically examined as well?
I wouldn't call it an examination, Julie. I would call it a violation.
Yeah.
And I remember the doctor saying, this young lady is intact. And at the time, I did not know the meaning of the word intact. I was 17, and I hadn't begun to menstruate at all. And I thought this was the reason why they were examining me.
But in fact, they were making this unbelievable leap, that because you'd gone to the pictures without permission, and it can't have been a very racy film, being shown at that time.
It was when Irish eyes are smiling.
When Irish eyes are smiling. Okay. Because you'd gone to the pictures without asking for permission from the institution you were in at the time, you'd had sex with somebody. Or you were capable of having sex with somebody.
No, actually, I wasn't in the institution. I was out working.
I see.
It was then you were sent to
It was then I was
Yes,
sent.
exactly. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Did you, I mean, did you protest? Did you say, you can't do this to me, I have rights?
No, I didn't know I had rights.
What year was this?
1950.
1950.
Yeah.
Very few women in Ireland in those days had rights.
And when you got to the asylum, or the laundry, or whatever you want to call it, what were the worst things that happened to you there? What are the things which stand out in your memory as being, the most degrading?
The first thing, that my name was taken from me. I was no longer Mary Cronin.
Just like in
there.
what we just
My
saw
name was
there.
taken from me. I was told I could not use my own name, and I couldn't write to anybody, only the nun from the orphanage who put me in there. My hair was cut very short. I was dressed up in big long grey dress and dirty old dress, and was told, and a white cap put in my head, and I was told I was a sinner, I was a penitent, and I was there to do penance for my sins.
And what penance would that be?
Work and pray all day long. You prayed morning, noon and night, and the ironical thing about it was that the nun would be praying in the laundry, and the thing that sticks out in my mind, that she said one day, now, she said, girls, we will pray for the men and women in Russia and Hungary who are being deprived of their civil rights. And we were locked up there. A load of fools praying for people in...
Is it the case, as comes across in the film, that for much of the time, the nuns, particularly the senior nuns, seem to have almost a sick obsession with sexuality? They seem to want to believe that you were all whores and whoring and with impure thoughts, and they talk to you about that.
Yes, and the thing was that my bra, when I went in, and they took my bra off me, and they gave me this, like a piece of calico, and put it around here.
A piece of what, sorry?
A piece of calico,
yeah.
Just flat.
You.
And I looked down and I thought, my God, where are they gone, These things were gone,
How did you find out about these asylums, Peter?
I saw a documentary in Channel 4 called Sex in a Cold Climate that Stephen Humphreys had directed. And I knew there was Magdalene's in Scotland. There was two, definitely one in Glasgow, which was actually run by the Protestant church. It wasn't Catholic. And as far as I know, there was about 13, 14 in England, some of which were run by the CRE. Again, all in the same line, even though they're supposedly different religions. They were all run exactly the same line, that the symbolic washing of clothing is going to cleanse your soul. And I knew there'd been a riot in Glasgow. The girls actually jumped the wall in 1964. There was a big public outcry and they shut it down. But the reason what shocked me when I saw the documentary was I had no idea that what went on. And I certainly had no idea of the range of supposed crimes. Like most of us, I'd heard something about fallen women, and it had that certain Victorian echo, but I didn't know that literally all it would take would be, it did remind me actually a lot of like the KGB in Russia. It would only take one piece of vicious gossip, and you could be quite literally kidnapped and then incarcerated indefinitely.
Well, and you said actually, sorry, Mary, that one of the first things, the most upsetting things that struck you when you went into the asylum that you were put in was the number of old women who were still there in their 70s, 80s, even 90s.